I think you're kind of the face of Aikido in a way on YouTube. People I talk to, they know of you. So you're really popular. And it's interesting because it's not like you did movies like Above the Law or Out for Justice where, yeah, of course, you're a movie star. People know you and they know you're the Aikido guy. You're like a YouTube guy that got popular. And then you're kind of like anti-Steven Seagal because everything Steven Seagal did to kind of like, you know, make Aikido cool and legit. Yeah. It's kind of like you're just discrediting it. Hey guys, today's video is likely the best interview you'll ever see with Rokas, the martial arts journey guy when it comes to Aikido. So this was some really cool stuff going on last year where he was asking the question, you know, prove to me your martial art works. Aikido came up in discussion. Then he had several guys submitting stuff. I had some of them on my channel. He had them on his channel. I chronicled that whole thing. You should catch up to those videos sometime when you get a chance. Really cool stuff. But in this one, we basically, he had digested all those conversations. We'll see if he changed his mind about Aikido. I asked him if he's the anti-Steven Seagal. There's all kinds of good stuff in this. But anyway, if you like this kind of content, please help support the channel by clicking the like button, subscribing, sharing the video, and make sure to check out Rokas, of course, on his Martial Arts Journey YouTube channel. And I just want to kind of give the audience a recap on the timeline on kind of why and how we're even having this interview. And chime in anytime if you want, if I messed any of these details up. But it's kind of an interesting history, and it's kind of something that I like, not only in the martial arts world, but kind of like in the YouTube world. I think it's kind of cool. Okay. So basically, and I'm just going to read my notes. Right. Basically, a couple of months ago, you made a video titled "Prove to Me That Your Martial Arts Work," which is an interesting title, and obviously you got a lot of submissions. Yeah. So with the Aikido specifically, Dan the Wolfman sent some videos featuring himself, Remy from Norway, and Lenny Sly, which led you to make a follow-up video titled, "Was I Wrong About Aikido?" Which is brilliant that you could kind of build off your video topics and it's like a continuing series, you know, almost like a television show or something. Yeah. So, which you seem to come to the conclusion in that video that if an Aikido practitioner had a background in martial arts competition or work security, then they could probably apply the techniques in real life situations, which led you to say it's more important to ask not if Aikido works, but if it is trained in a way which leads to it working. So going from there, now in that video, you believe Remy could make Aikido work based on his background in security, but based on the videos that you've seen of him training on his channel, Martial Arts 101, that's his channel, you weren't sold on the way he trained because his opponents, at least in the video footage you've seen, were very compliant in the same way, you know, that they are in any other Aikido school. So the interesting thing is, so I ended up having Remy on my channel, and we discussed that comment in addition to like some other Aikido related things. And I put out a series of videos, one which was titled "Real Aikido Expert Proves Rokas, you, the martial arts journey guy, was wrong about Aikido." And I emailed that to you. And I guess there was like a mix up because he said you responded, but I never got the response. But long story short, at least we're talking now. Yeah. So because basically, you know, I really wanted to kind of see where it goes and get your take, see if it could lead anywhere, which, you know, led to this video here, which is awesome. So the thing about my channel, and I guess it's kind of similar to yours because you'll put out a video title or a topic that you can build off of. Like I've kind of done that on my channel too. And, you know, so the video I made with Remy, like if you just look at the title, I could almost see that somebody could maybe put like a negative spin on it and like, oh, you guys are attacking Rokas, the martial arts journey guy, which I could see how somebody could see that angle. But the thing is, and why I emailed you, it's like anything like I see on my channel or any video, I'm more than happy to like tell somebody that, you know, and it's not for like a conflict, but I kind of want to see where something goes. So, and I think some people just perceive it more negatively than it's intended to be. But I did realize you kind of have a similar thing where like you'll just, it leads you somewhere else, you know, where you want to prove to me that your martial arts work. And then you get all these submissions and like, then you question it. And I like your open-mindedness. Like, does Aikido actually work? And you're willing to listen to other people because here's the thing. I think in general there are a lot of closed-minded people, but you're never going to evolve as a person or a martial artist with that kind of mindset. So the way I look
Mm,
at it, I like that you're open to hearing opinions, because it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to reconfirm and make your stance stronger, or it's going to make you question based on new evidence that comes to light, based on new thoughts that come to light. Like, maybe they have a point here.
mhm.
But and trust me, this all leads into where I'm going
Yeah,
next.
yeah, no, I'm following you.
But continuing on the timeline,
Mm.
you did a video titled "My Response to My Haters and My Hippie Dance Aikido," because somebody had posted a part of your third Dan black belt test on YouTube,
Yeah,
and as you pointed out, there's like the logical fallacy of ad hominem going on
right.
that you wanted to address, which was very very cool. After that, you did end up having Remy from Martial Arts One on One on your channel, which I felt you two had a productive conversation.
Sure.
And then you expanded on it further with Dan the Wolfman. So those were really cool live videos. I thought overall the videos made like all of you guys look good, because again, you
Mm.
were open to hearing their criticism and able to have like, just like an honest, open discussion, as opposed to just, that closed-minded nature that I brought up that doesn't really help anybody and just brings conflict into the thing, but doesn't help resolve or expand
Mhm.
anybody's way of thinking. So basically now, and what I've seen from you and what I think you implement is you kind of have like a a kill them with kindness sort of thing about you. So it's really hard to dislike you. It's like you really can't dislike a guy who's so nice, you know? And that's just you. It's not like you're being fake. You're just a nice guy.
Right.
So, I mean, you got to be you. But I think
Mm.
that approach definitely works and helps diffuse things. But more so than that, it's like the open mindedness where I felt like you were really
Mm.
listening to them. But I will say this, and I want to
Mhm.
ask this.
Yeah.
So, in the moment, having a conversation, uh, for me, I may respond and think something in the moment, but later on, after I digest it, I may think differently.
Right.
So now that you basically had time to digest, that conversation with Dan the Wolfman and Remy,
Mhm.
have you changed your mind in any way or just reinforced what you believe about Aikido prior to speaking with them? Because I know you had a certain opinion before you spoke with them.
Mhm.
Have they changed your mind in any way?
Some things did change, because I was essentially in those 2 videos. I was primarily asking for feedback. I was like, okay, so guys, just let me know what troubles you. I want to listen to it, and I was really openly listening and wanting to see maybe there's something I'm not getting, maybe there's something I'm not considering. And one of the points that both Remy and Dan made, although I think Remy stressed that point more, uh, and it's a tricky subject because it comes down to generalization. And my audience had a good discussion about that, and I thought a lot about that myself. How much can we generalize, and how much can we avoid generalizing? Because on one side of the subject, or on one side of the picture, if you type in Aikido, you'll see the majority of videos which from the whole world, which will be similar. There usually won't be sparring, won't be pressure testing, cooperative, very aesthetic, beautiful, but you kind of have a certain vibe. And there are what Dan called outliers,
Sure.
these people who do something different. But then that's kind of the middle. It's like, so how do you talk about Aikido as a martial art? On one level, it makes sense to generalize because there is the majority of styles. On the other hand, and that's what Dan mostly presented to me, was that we have to take into the picture the outliers, and that's true. And I think over the years, you mentioned that there's this evolution. We publish some videos, and that's kind of the funny thing is YouTube times a certain incident, a certain subject, opinion. It's like taking a photograph, and you take a photograph 5 years later, you're going to be different. And the same as, and some of the things are going to be the same, some are going to be different. But the same as with videos we put out. And if I said something 5 years ago when I was really in a bad mood about being ditched by my or kicked out of the organization that I was part of, I realized it's a cult, etc., and I was still fresh out of that experience, it's natural that I will bring up and emphasize more negative things. The trouble is, most people see a video and that's their conclusion. And I'm also interested. I also want to share this because of some of the subjects you mentioned in the way you introduced the subject. And I'll give a quick example. Sometimes once in a while I have a talk with my followers, just like, well, people who watch my videos. They write me an email and I'm like, yeah, you know what, we can call each other up. And one of these conversations I had was with this lady who practices Aikido, and her boyfriend used to love my Aikido videos years ago when I was pure Aikido.
Sure.
And ever since I released the Aikido versus MMA video, he hates my guts and he doesn't watch any more videos. He didn't watch even one video after that, and he has a very negative opinion about me.
He's too busy watching Steven Skull movies now.
I don't know, in a way, like, I think it's a bit crazy to, because that video, I think Aikido versus MMA, the initial video came out like 4 years ago, but basically this particular example captures the essence of many people.
Sure.
Somebody watches a single video, they decide which is, kind of a time capsule of that particular day, that particular opinion, and they decide, okay, that's Rokas, that's his opinion, he hates Aikido. And I'm like, so much more happens. And so the reason I'm saying that is I did evolve over the years. I started to be more mindful of saying, okay, I'm not talking about all of Aikido. I'm talking about my experience. I'm talking about my teachers, or I acknowledge their outliers. But I could agree, and I do agree that I could do a better job at it. And when Remy pointed that out and Dan pointed it out, I realized, yeah, whenever I talk about Aikido, I could be more specific. Okay, this is my experience. This is exactly where I came from. And I'm not saying necessarily that about everything, and there are different examples, so kind of to be more balanced in it. So I took that point from them. I appreciate it. Also, Remy kind of touched me by saying that I'm and it's something I don't consider, I just honestly sincerely don't consider, although I should, is that in a way I have global impact
You got a lot
to
of
some
subs,
degree.
man. Yeah.
Right. I mean, well, yeah, I guess, but the thing is, I'm just kind of trying to objectively look at it. I think humility is an important aspect for me. Like I don't, and you're right. I'm not like sincerity, humility, kindness, etc. These things, I'm not pushing them. I'm not trying to, fake them or whatever. It's just part of me. And I think sometimes I like I consider myself not as important as sometimes maybe it actually happens. I released a video, I'm like, I got a million views. Yeah, that's cool. And I don't think about it like, oh, I'm sitting there and thinking a million people watched my video and now they're thinking about it. I just kind of underappreciate it. And when Remy said, you know what, your videos impact people. And a lot of people, and I think it's true, when you type in Aikido, one of the videos you'll get, one of the top videos is probably still Aikido versus MMA. And that video doesn't present Aikido in a very good picture. And that's what most people will think, like, oh, okay, they're going to watch this video and they're going to be like, oh, that's what Aikido is. Aikido sucks, period. Even if I don't want to say that today. So another thing, basically, to answer the question directly, another thing I picked up from those conversations is to be more mindful that, yeah, I'm having influence and I'm potentially doing a bad favor to a lot of Aikido guys. Sometimes I do want to do that because there are schools and instances which I think deserve to be put on the spotlight and be questioned, like kind of the whole cult mentality, and which exists, and not only in Aikido.
Oh
I think
yeah, that's every
martial
martial
arts,
art, sure.
yeah. So I think sometimes it's important to pressure those people and to pressure those subjects, but at the same time it's important to also consider the other side. It's kind of a tricky subject in a way, and so I
It
think,
is.
yeah.
It's a fine line, man. But I do like your approach on just asking the questions. I mean, because here's the thing with human nature psychology. If I spent my entire life training purely Taekwondo, which that's what I started training in, but if
Mm,
I was a diehard and did nothing but lived and breathed Taekwondo, confirmation bias is going to come into play. I'm going to convince myself any way that I can I didn't waste the last 10 or 20 years of my life, and what I'm doing is better than everything else. And I'm going to convince myself. So if I was doing Aikido and somebody like you came along, and you're very popular, because if you type in Aikido on YouTube, I know the Aikido Flow channel is pretty popular, which is cool, but
yeah.
I think you're kind of the face of Aikido in a way on
Mm,
YouTube, because your videos pop up. Like, I never searched you, but
yeah.
and people I talk to, they know of you, so you're
Mm,
really popular. And it's interesting because it's not like you did movies like Above the Law or Out for Justice where yeah, of course, you're a movie star. People know you and they know you're the
Mm,
Aikido guy. You're like a YouTube guy that got popular. And then you're kind of like, the way I kind of seen you, I mean, not so much now, but
yeah.
based on those other videos, this black belt is useless. Why quit Aikido? Aikido versus MMA. I can't do
Yeah.
anything. Aikido sucks. But basically, the way I kind of seen you is like he's kind of like the anti Steven Seagal because everything Steven Seagal did to kind of like make Aikido cool and legit.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're just discrediting it, and but people get fixated on that, just because if you're a Seagal fan, I don't
Mm,
think you necessarily should be in love with Aikido and think it's the greatest thing. And if you're
right.
not an Aikido fan, it seems like they want to jump on your back. Well, Rokas said this. Rokas is an Aikido guy. He did it for 15 years. So that means it sucks and it doesn't work for anybody. People just like to jump on that bandwagon. But again, they're going with their own confirmation bias.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
kind of hitch, but they're hitching on your wagon with the anti-Aikido stuff. So with all that said,
Mm.
do you see yourself not you as you,
Hmm.
but do you see yourself as like other people see me as kind of more like the anti-Aikido guy, or do you not like think people think that about you?
Oh yeah, no, I think that's a lot of people do think that. I think there are levels. I think some people demonize me. I think some people like think I'm just like this monster. And I think especially like, these the really loyal Aikidoka. Not everyone, but I think there are people, and again, I think these are probably people who saw one or two of my videos and they don't even watch the follow-ups of my evolution and my reconsiderations. And then they decide this Rokas is this demon who hates Aikido. He bashes and trashes Aikido. I get some emails like from those people. I'm like, holy crap, am I that bad? I surprised myself by hearing it from them. But so I think some of these people are out there. There are other levels as well, and I don't think it's wrong to consider me as anti Aikido. I wouldn't call that myself, but I understand where people are coming from. In a way, the thing is, the way I see it, I challenge Aikido and I challenge martial arts,
Sure.
and it's maybe it's a wrong perspective to some degree, but the way I see it, they have the right, or they have the capacity, opportunity to defend themselves by publishing their own video, by showing proof that actually I'm wrong, by proving me wrong. And that's kind of the one of the reasons why I made that initial prove to me your martial art works. And that's the reason I published the reconsideration about Aikido, where I think, I did my best to reconsider and say, actually, you know what, I was wrong in some cases, and let's have this discussion. Like, I love to be proven wrong. But a lot of the people don't do that, and they only focus on the aspect that I'm criticizing Aikido. But that's, again, the trouble with a video is that you can only put in so much in a video. And because YouTube is my job, I try to make videos based on how YouTube works in a way where that it would be YouTube worthy. And if you try, I learned from experience that if you try to cover too many subjects in a single video, and you go, let's say the video is, and you know how titles work and thumbnails work as well, and
Sure.
I'd be
Yeah.
like, let's discuss the pros and cons of Aikido. Maybe that video could pick up, but mostly people are coming for one side of the picture. They're interested in that particular subject. It's like, okay, so why Aikido sucks, or why Aikido is the best, because
Yeah, I mean, with
Aikido,
those words, you kind of have to evoke some sort of emotion out of
right?
somebody to click. Oh, I got to click this. Why is he saying that? Not like the pros and cons of Aikido. Like, okay, this is very informative, but a fraction of the people are going to click it. Like, I would click it, but most people want why Aikido sucks, and then like, oh, what was he going to say?
Right. Right. Yeah, and in a way, that's that's my position. I'm the person who questions Aikido, and so I continue to do my job. I'm like, okay, I'm looking at this critically, and I'm looking at the bad sides. And these days, I'm trying to put in the positive stuff in as well. But in a way, it's not my job to be fluffy about it and to try to protect it. I'm the critical thinking guy in martial arts, and that's what I try to do. Uh, but people don't know that if they have a conversation with me, like a lot of Aikidoka, they think, and I remember that happened even with the organization I was part of. I was essentially, maybe they would say a different story, but essentially I feel like I was kind of kicked out, not directly, but I was kind of pressured out of it. Long story short, I considered the other people my friends, and a couple of the instructors, we used to have like an international seminar. We would meet in a different country each time, and and go together with our students, and we still had one scheduled. And after I left the organization, some time passed, and the time came to reconnect and consider whether we're going to do this or not. And initially, we thought like, yeah, maybe let's still do it. But eventually, they said, you know what? No, we can't do it with you. And I think the reason they didn't is because they thought that if I'll come down to the seminar, all I will do, I will just bash Aikido and I will say how this organization is bad and I will, you know, put Aikido to dirt. But the truth is, when I meet Aikido people, and again, that's what they think. Like, if I would sit down with an Aikido guy in a cafe, I would just continue bashing and saying, like, "What the heck are you doing?" Reality is, I've been in those situations. I sit down with someone who does Aikido, and they're like, "Oh, I love Aikido." I'm like, "Oh, that's great." So how's your training? And, I don't. If they're not asking me about my critical opinion, I'm not saying anything. And even if they do, I respect that it takes a while to convert yourself. I'm not expecting people to be like, "Oh, tell me the truth and I will completely shift my opinion." I try to gently push them into that direction. If they ask me, "So does Aikido work?" I'm like, "Well, I'm skeptical. There's some ways you could make it work, but you should be careful. That's probably not the best martial art for self-defense." I'm not like, "Oh, Aikido sucks, period." But in videos, nobody cares about five different opinions that I have and about me discussing about my own opinions. They want a single particular subject, and that's what I give them. So I don't know, maybe I made it too complex, but I don't know.
No,
Does that make
that's a
sense?
great answer. Here's a question for you, because there's a silver lining in everything, and I think your experience with Aikido put you on this martial arts journey, which it's more than martial arts. It's really just a journey of evolving. And I know a lot of your videos talk about you want to be a better person, but so just in my opinion, to be a better person is just to evolve in anything, whether it's your martial art, whether it's your relationship, just they're little notches overall in life that just kind of make you a better person over time, in my opinion. But do you have regrets? Like, if you had to do it all over again, would you go to Switzerland? Would you train? Would you open your dojo? And again, the silver lining is it left you on this journey, which I think is positive. Or would you say, you know
Right.
what, if I had to do it all over again, I'm not going to waste, uh, and I don't even know if you want to say the word waste, but I'm not going to
Yeah.
spend those 15 years of my life dedicated to Aikido, doing all that. Would you have gone like a completely different route based on like what you know now?
Yeah. It's a great question. It's a difficult one because there's, again, many layers and sides to it. But I definitely thought about it, and I think part of me wants to, or wanted to regret that sometimes, uh, because you do think, like, I do think about that. If I would have started with BJJ or MMA when I was like 14 years old, and I had the same passion, because like I don't have the same energy that I do when I was 20. I'm starting to feel like I'm getting old, and now
No, you're
the,
young, man. I mean, I'm
I,
like 40, dude. I still feel young.
I know,
So,
but I don't know. Maybe something is wrong with me, because I can definitely say I'm not functioning the same way when I was in 20, and I had a different perspective about martial arts too. I guess now I care about so many more things, and back then martial arts was the whole world. I
was
could
your
train like
life? Sure, yeah.
right. I could train like 8 hours, and I didn't
Good
have
old
enough.
days.
Right, exactly. And so if I would have started with BJJ or MMA, I probably would have went really far. So part of me does want to think about that, but I think the more mature part of me looks at it and realizes that me going through the experience I went through, it's kind of my superpower, whether some people would agree or some people would not. But the way I see it, that gives me a very unique perspective. Like even Aikido versus MMA, which is till today still my most watched video, uh it was such a unique, and I didn't appreciate it as much as I do in retrospect. I thought I'm just doing kind of something which feels natural to me.
Sure.
But looking back now, knowing what I know about the whole bigger context of martial arts, that was such a unique moment, because I was essentially pure Aikidoka. And then I did a little tiny bit of BJJ, but essentially I was pure Aikido. And then I went into the MMA ring. It's such a hard thing to pull off. If I would have done it a few years later after practicing BJJ, it would have been a completely different video. So the fact that everything just came together in this way, it became this kind of interesting phenomena. And now the reason I can make these videos, and the reason I'm so passionate about critical thinking in martial arts, and I can share all these crazy stories about being part of a cult, quote unquote, So all these crazy stories I can share and help out people who are going through the same just because I went through that path. So in that regard, again, as I said, it's kind of my superpower, and that's the reason I don't regret it. But just to kind of finish off that answer, there's only one thing where I kind of like to entertain myself by saying there's one thing I regret. And I made that a video even about that, because generally I'm a person who's like, you shouldn't regret anything. Life is life. But there's one thing, if I would choose one thing, I regret that when my BJJ friend who introduced me to BJJ, he wanted to continue to train me intensely so I would join a BJJ tournament. And my Aikido instructor was against that.
Hmm.
And so I kind of gave into the pressure and I decided to not do it. And I kind of stopped doing BJJ essentially for that period of time. So that's the moment where I actually regret. I'm like, I wish I would have stood up and said, fuck you. Or I don't know if I can swear.
Yeah, branch out further in the martial arts instead of just being the cure Aikido.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You call
wish
it
I,
Aikidoka? Is that
sorry.
what an Aikido practitioner is called? An Aikidoka?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Okay.
correct. Aikidoka. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do regret that point but even then, I'm not really serious about that regret. But if I would choose one thing, I'm like, I wish I would have not stop BJJ at that moment, but I was already like so far deep in my Aikido career.
How many years ago was that when you
That
could have
moment,
branched out to BJJ basically before your instructor said, no, just, you're a keto guy, just stick with Aikido?
I'm thinking connecting the dots. That was probably 2014.
Oh, that's a while ago.
Yeah, 14, 15. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, here's a question, you know, just based on the nature of, harmony and peacefulness with Aikido and kind of your personality, it's almost like, I mean, I guess you could have, explored kickboxing from day one or BJJ
Yeah.
or something else, or even just boxing. Do you ever think maybe you ended up with Aikido? I know you said your friend kind of brought you there,
Yeah.
but do you ever think maybe you ended up with the passion in pursuing that because that just basically meshed with your nature in general more than if you were just hitting stuff and sparring
Yeah.
hard all the time? I
Right.
mean, that's kind of what I'm almost thinking.
Yeah, I think you're right. There was a bit of like I was interested in boxing already early in my Aikido days. I was interested in karate. But it's crazy because my both my instructors essentially discouraged me from cross training because I was interested in it. And when I did Aikido for about 2 years in Lithuania, I remember a point where, and I was very close with my Aikido instructor, like the first one. And I remember I walked up to him and I said, I want to try some karate and I would like to participate in a tournament. And he essentially talked me out of it. So part of me wanted to have that more kind of contact, sparring, etc. But at the same time, I think the other side of the answer is truer. It's bigger because, as I said, I was a bit of a weeaboo, like a Japanese culture fan, samurai things. I was very peaceful. And so when I read the Aikido philosophy, it really clicked with me. I was like, this is perfect for me. So a small part of me was interested in full contact sparring, fighting. But honestly, I think I was also afraid of it. Like because of my nature was so peaceful, I think I didn't have that draw to go and think like, oh, these, because I think there were like these kind of small beginnings of MMA. As I said, like Lithuania really lagged behind because of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
history. So I think there were some full contact schools which were probably more like Fight Club. That's how all MMA started. So it was rough, and I think I wasn't drawn to that. I thought about it and I thought, well, yeah, that's probably too much. I'll just get my ass kicked, and that might have been the case. I think early days MMA, it was not really the place for nice people in general. Now it's an educated, kind of grown thing where BJJ and MMA, most schools have beginners program. Most schools are interested to have all types of people. But when I listen to the first days of MMA, it's just like Fight Club. So there's a
Yeah,
big
that's pretty
chance I
rough
wouldn't have fit
back
in.
then.
Yeah.
You had to have a love for just fighting, I think, in general.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and I think that attracted to a lot of like, guys who just felt tough.
Right.
But yeah, a little different than traditional martial arts. I mean, there's some overlap, but it's definitely different.